At the age of 80, Randolph Scott, the legendary Western cowboy star, publicly revealed the names of Hollywood actors who were gay, men he had secretly dated. And this story, my friends, is far from simple, far from easy. It's full of emotion, full of mystery, and full of the hidden corners of an era when the truth had to be buried deep. So, sit back, relax, and join me as we uncover the dramatic pages of Hollywood's history. Don't look away, because this is a journey you won't forget. Here we go. Randolph Scott. The name conjures an image of a lone cowboy riding across the endless prairies of the West, his gaze steady yet resolute, as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Born on January 23, 1898, in Orange County, Virginia, with the given name George Randolph Scott, he was not just an actor, but an icon of rugged masculinity, integrity, and nobility. Yet, behind that silver screen hero was a complex man, living in a Hollywood full of pressures, where the truth about oneself sometimes had to be buried beneath a glittering facade. Today, we're not just talking about the Western films that made Scott's name, but about the personal secrets he carried throughout his life, secrets he only dared to reveal in the twilight of his years, when the stage lights had dimmed. Picture this, a young boy, growing up in the heart of Southern culture in Charlotte, North Carolina. Scott's family was no ordinary one. His father, George Grant Scott, was a talented engineer and the first certified public accountant in North Carolina, a man of great ambition and vision. He wasn't just a father, he was a role model of hard work and aspiration, always encouraging his children to reach for new heights. Scott's mother, Lucille Crane Scott, came from a wealthy North Carolina family, bringing to the household an air of refinement, discipline, and Southern aristocratic grace. She was the keeper of the family's hearth, ensuring her children were raised with deep cultural values and pride in their roots. I believe it was this environment that forged in Randolph Scott a quiet strength, a resilient calm, and an unyielding spirit, qualities that would later shine through in his iconic roles. Scott wasn't a boy who merely daydreamed. He was a young man full of energy, passionate about sports, and driven by academic ambition. He attended the Georgia Institute of Technology, where he honed his logical and technical mind. Later, he transferred to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where he began to explore his love for drama and the performing arts. Those college years, I believe, planted the seeds of his Hollywood dream. But before that dream could come true, his life was swept into a greater challenge, World War I. At 19, Scott enlisted, serving in France as an artillery observer. Those days on the battlefield, facing smoke and danger, etched in him an inner strength, a calm under pressure, and a quiet courage. I think these experiences shaped Randolph Scott, not just as an actor, but as a man of resilience and dignity. When the war ended, Scott didn't return to North Carolina for a quiet life. Instead, he set his sights on Los Angeles, carrying his dream of conquering Hollywood. In the late 1920s, Hollywood was a world of opportunity, but also unrelenting harshness. Scott didn't have industry connections, but he had one advantage: family ties. Through them, he was introduced to Howard Hughes, one of the most powerful producers of the time. Hughes saw potential in Scott, and small roles in silent films opened the door for him. From there, Randolph Scott's journey in the world of cinema began. Imagine this scene: a tall, broad-shouldered Southern boy with a chiseled face and deep, soulful eyes steps onto Hollywood's sound stages. It didn't take long for casting directors to notice him. His early roles in films like The Far Call and The Virginian in 1929, though small, gave him a foothold in the industry. Throughout the 1930s, he experimented with various genres: adventure, romantic comedy, even detective stories. But it wasn't until the 1940s, when he found his place in westerns, that Randolph Scott truly became a star. Films like 7 Men from Now in 1956, The Tall T in 1957, Ride Lonesome in 1959, and Comanche Station in 1960 collectively known as the Renown Cycle, weren't just westerns. They were artistic masterpieces. They brought a minimalist storytelling style, rich with psychological depth, and Scott, with his quiet yet commanding presence, elevated his characters to new heights. Let me pause for a moment to talk about what made Randolph Scott special. Unlike John Wayne, whose larger-than-life bravado defined him, Scott brought a refined, introspective masculinity to the screen. His characters were often solitary cowboys, scarred by their pasts, weary of violence, yet unwavering in their moral code. They didn't need long speeches or grand gestures. With just a glance, a tilt of the head, Scott said it all. I believe that's why directors like Martin Scorsese, Clint Eastwood, and Quentin Tarantino admire him. Scott didn't just act, he told stories through his very being, with authenticity and depth. To me, that's what makes him a legend, not just for audiences of his time, but for cinephiles today. Now, my friends, let's get to the most captivating part of this story, the part I promised from the start. At 80, long retired from the spotlight and living a quiet life in Beverly Hills, Randolph Scott chose to open up about a secret that Hollywood in his era dared not speak aloud. He revealed the names of 6 gay actors, close friends of his, who had to live in secrecy due to societal pressures and the tight control of the studios. Those names were Cary Grant, Montgomery Clift, Merv Griffin, Jim Nabors, Cesar Romero, and Rock Hudson. Each name isn't just a star, it's a story, a life torn between the glamour of fame and the shadows of secrecy. Let's start with Cary Grant, perhaps the most shocking name on the list. Scott and Grant weren't just friends, they lived together for over a decade in a beachfront home in Santa Monica. From the 1930s to the early 1940s, the press at the time called them bachelor roommates, a phrase that sounded innocent enough. But photos of them relaxing by the pool, dining together, or simply laughing raised questions. Was there something more? I'm not here to claim they were definitely a couple, because no one can know the absolute truth. But in the context of Hollywood back then, where everything had to be carefully concealed, the relationship between Scott and Grant was a great mystery. Grant, with his charming smile and gentlemanly demeanor, was one of the biggest stars of his era. Yet behind the glamour, he lived under the pressure of hiding his true self. Scott, Grant's lifelong friend, understood that pain better than anyone. I believe Scott's inclusion of Grant in this list wasn't just a revelation, it was a way to honor and empathize with a friend who shared those difficult years with him. Next is Montgomery Clift, an actor whose emotional performances in films like A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity captivated audiences. Clift was a sensitive soul, a true artist, but his life was filled with inner turmoil. His sexuality was an open secret in Hollywood, yet he could never live openly as himself. A car accident in 1956 left him scarred physically and emotionally, and the years that followed saw Clift sink into pain and self-doubt. Randolph Scott, who witnessed Clift's turbulent journey, expressed deep empathy. To me, Clift's story is a heartbreaking reminder of the cost of living in hiding, especially in an industry where image was everything. For me, Clift isn't just a talented actor, he's a symbol of quiet struggle, a man who sacrificed so much to maintain his stardom. Merv Griffin, a name you likely know as the host of Jeopardy! And Wheel of Fortune, was also on Scott's list. Griffin was a warm, charismatic figure on screen, but behind that was a private man who steered clear of rumors about his personal life. Scott knew a different Griffin, one who had to balance the spotlight of fame with the secrecy of his private world. For Griffin, being exposed wasn't just a personal issue, it threatened the media empire he had built. I see in Griffin a quiet courage, smiling for millions of viewers while carrying the weight of worry and pressure. To me, Griffin's story reminds us that even the most successful people have hidden struggles they face alone. Jim Nabors, beloved for his role as Gomer Pyle in The Andy Griffith Show, is another case. Neighbors had a long-term relationship with Stan Cadwallader, but it wasn't until 2013, near the end of his life, that they could marry. During the height of his career, Neighbors had to carefully guard his private life to avoid scandal. A malicious rumor that he and Rock Hudson had married caused him great pain. And to me, this shows how toxic Hollywood could be back then. A rumor, even as a joke, could destroy a person. For me, Neighbors is a testament to the power of love and patience, living true to his heart despite having to wait decades to be open about it. Cesar Romero, known for his colorful portrayal of the Joker in the 1960s Batman series, was a charming gentleman, always seen as a lifelong bachelor. But the truth was that Romero had to conceal his sexuality, maintaining the image of a debonair leading man in public. Scott admired Romero's elegance and wit, and he regretted that his friend couldn't live authentically. To me, Romero's story is a reminder of the injustice of that era, when a man of such talent and dignity had to live on the line between truth and deception. Finally, Rock Hudson, perhaps the most tragic figure on the list. Hudson was the epitome of 1950s Hollywood masculinity, starring in romantic roles alongside leading ladies like Doris Day. But in reality, Hudson was gay, and his double life was meticulously managed by his agent, Henry Wilson. It wasn't until he was diagnosed with AIDS in the 1980s that the truth came to light. Hudson's death in 1985 was not just a loss, but a turning point, forcing Hollywood and the public to confront issues of homosexuality and the AIDS crisis. Scott, who had known Hudson from his early days, mourned not only his friend, but the years Hudson had to live in secrecy. To me, Hudson's story is a wake-up call, a plea for compassion and change. Randolph Scott's decision to reveal these names, my friends, wasn't just gossip. It was a courageous act, a way to honor his friends and condemn the harsh standards of their time. At 80, with nothing left to lose, Scott wanted the world to know that behind Hollywood's glamour were real people with real pain. And that, I believe, makes him not just a star but a man of profound heart and admirable courage. Now, let's talk about Scott's personal life, a lesser-known but deeply meaningful aspect. Scott married twice in his life. His first marriage was to Marion DuPont, a wealthy heiress from the prestigious DuPont family, one of America's most powerful dynasties. Marion was not only an heiress but a talented equestrian, deeply tied to Virginia's horse racing culture. Interestingly, Scott served as best man at Marion's first wedding to another man, showing they were close long before they became husband and wife. Their marriage, which began in 1936, seemed like a perfect union between a rising Hollywood star and a society lady. But after just 3 years, they divorced. They had no children, and some say their lifestyles, Marion's attachment to Virginia and Scott's focus on Hollywood, drove them apart. What's striking, though, is that even after the divorce, Marion kept the Scott surname until her death in 1983. To me, that's a meaningful gesture, suggesting a lingering respect, perhaps even affection, between them. Scott's second marriage to actress Patricia Stillman was a different story. They met in the early 1940s and married in 1944, during World War II and at the peak of Scott's career. Patricia was 21 years younger than Scott, but the age difference didn't stop them from building a lasting bond. In 1950, they adopted 2 children, Sandra and Christopher, a decision that reflected their desire for a quiet family life away from the spotlight. Patricia was Scott's rock, and they remained together for over 4 decades, a rarity in Hollywood. When Scott passed away in 1987, Patricia was by his side, and she lived another 17 years, passing in 2004. They were laid to rest side by side at Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, a testament to their love and devotion. To me, Scott and Patricia's love story is a bright spot, a reminder that even in Hollywood's tempting world, true love can endure. Scott passed away on March 2, 1987 at 89 in Beverly Hills, from heart and lung ailments. In his final years, he lived reclusively, shunning the spotlight, choosing a peaceful life with his family. He was buried at Elmwood Cemetery in Charlotte, where he was born and raised, a meaningful return to his Southern roots. Scott and Patricia's mid-century modern home in Beverly Hills, once a symbol of their refined taste, was sadly demolished in 2008. But Scott's legacy isn't in material things. The Randolph Scott papers at UCLA's library are a treasure trove, preserving photos, letters, notes, and personal documents that offer a glimpse into the real man, from a young boy in North Carolina to a cinematic legend. Looking back, I believe Randolph Scott's story isn't just about Westerns or Hollywood secrets. It's a story of courage, of living true to oneself in a world full of pressures. For those of you who lived through those years, I'm sure this story stirs many emotions. Perhaps you sat in a theater, captivated by Scott riding across the screen. Perhaps you admired his image as a rugged cowboy. But now we know Scott was more than a star. He was a man with dreams, pains, and an open heart. I want to take a moment to reflect on the meaning of this story. In the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, Hollywood wasn't just an industry, it was a world of unwritten rules. People like Cary Grant, Montgomery Clift, and Rock Hudson didn't just fight for success, they fought to survive. They had to hide their true selves, not just for their careers, but for their safety. Randolph Scott, by revealing these names, did something few dared to do. He broke the silence, even if only in his final years. And I believe that's a legacy greater than his films. It's a legacy of honesty, courage, and friendship. To me, Scott's story is also a reminder of change. Think about the journey society has taken, from a time when being openly gay was unthinkable to today, when we're moving toward a more open world, but that journey isn't over. There are still people fighting to live authentically, and the stories of Scott, Grant, and Hudson remind us that compassion and acceptance are timeless values. I hope, my friends, that hearing this story makes you feel a bit proud of how far we've come and a bit determined to keep building a better world. Before we wrap up, I want to share a bit about the context of the Western films Scott helped shape. The Western genre isn't just about guns and horses. It's about morality, the struggle between right and wrong, and people searching for meaning in a chaotic world. Scott, with his understated acting style, brought new depth to the genre. His films weren't just entertainment, they were lessons in integrity, resilience, and standing up for what's right. To me, that's why, even today, those films still resonate, still move us. If you've seen Ride the High Country, Scott's final film in 1962, you might remember the image of two aging lawmen, played by Scott and Joel McCrea, facing the sunset of the Old West. That wasn't just a movie, it was a farewell, a ballad about change and enduring values. I've watched that film many times, and each time it leaves me a little choked up. Scott, with his weathered gaze, told us that no matter how times change, no matter how harsh the world, integrity and courage will always light the way. I also want to mention Charlotte, North Carolina, Scott's hometown. It's a city steeped in Southern spirit, with tree-lined streets, historic homes, and a strong sense of community. When Scott was laid to rest at Elmwood Cemetery, I believe he chose to return to his roots, to the values his parents, George Grant and Lucille Scott, instilled in him. Elmwood Cemetery, with its moss-covered headstones, is a peaceful place, where Scott rests among memories of his childhood. I've read that fans still visit his grave, leaving small bouquets as a way to honor the man who brought them dreams through the silver screen. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. What do you think about the secrets Randolph Scott revealed? Do you feel empathy for people like Cary Grant or Rock Hudson, who had to live in secrecy? And if you've seen Scott's films, which is your favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next exciting videos. We have many more stories to explore, from Hollywood secrets to the legends who shaped our culture. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Randolph Scott's story is a reminder that behind every star is a person, with dreams, pains, and hopes. Cherish those stories and keep spreading compassion in our world. I'll see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.